Y estamos vivo. Good morning, my peoples. Buenos días, buenos días,
Good
buenos días.
morning.
Buenos días. Good morning.
Today we are here with Deya, Johnny, and a new face, Mango, our resident spiritual guru. Uh,
Hola.
Mango, tell us quickly about yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mango. I reside in the northeast of New England right now. That's where my parents immigrated from. I'm half Puerto Rican, half Guatemalan. My parents met here. My parents would ship me off to either Guatemala in the summer and then Puerto Rico for all my like school breaks. So I always grew up like being with my culture. I was raised really religious, and then in college and post college, I really started to tap into my own spirituality, and I really have found like peace in that. So I really am excited to talk about that here.
Speaking of spirituality, that's part of the theme of today's episode of people in the diaspora reconnecting with their identity through food, music, and spirituality. Um, for me, food always played a big part through the identity of Puerto Rico. You always woke up on Christmas morning to the smell of that pernil in the oven that was put in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that made me feel like it's time. It's the real holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, um, so I want to ask you guys, food wise, music wise, spirituality wise, what do you guys do to reconnect? With Puerto Rico, or how do you guys keep that connection alive going, Johnny?
So, as you know, I'm in Texas. A lot of the representation is very minimal over here.
Hmm.
So, what I've done in the past is I try to learn different recipes. I've gone to you as well, trying to learn, certain foods. But my go-to is always just tostones. I always make tostones. It's quick, easy, and it kind of just brings you back you know, to Puerto Rico. And it's gotta be
Cool.
salty, no sweet. I don't like that.
What about you, Mango?
So my mom, when she moved here from Guatemala, she didn't know how to cook. Like my aunt was really strict about like who was allowed in the kitchen and stuff. So my mama, which is like who my grandma is on my dad's side,
Hmm.
taught my mom how to cook only Puerto Rican food. So growing up was really weird because like I have my Guatemalan identity, but I never like I could eat some foods, but my mom didn't really know how to cook that food. My mom only knew how to cook Puerto Rican food growing up. So um my mom being taught by my grandma was kind of like really special because like I got to be passed down recipes that normally I don't think they would have been passed down because of like how recipe passing downs usually go in Latino cultures. You usually get that from a woman passing it down to another woman within your own family, but my mom didn't have that. So my mom got like only Puerto Rican recipes. So growing up, I only ate Puerto Rican food. Um, and like even now, like my mom and I, we make sofrito together. Like we will take a Saturday morning, we'll buy everything at the super, we'll go to Hispanic grocery, we'll get everything we need, and we sit and we just make homemade sofrito because we like to control the sodium because I don't know, high blood pressure is a thing. But like for at least for my family, it's always been really big to cook together. I grew up mostly with my Puerto Rican family, so like I learned recipes from everyone, from my grandpa, from my grandma, from my aunts, from my uncles, from my mom, and that has always been really special for me. So like even when I would go to Puerto Rico, I would always ask my abuela to teach me one recipe before I
Hmm.
would leave. So that's always been fun. The only thing I haven't learned how to cook is morcilla, but I'm not a fan of morcilla, so it's like I don't know, I'm weird about
But
that.
yeah, so good though. Oh, that's my favorite.
Really?
I
Okay, I
listen.
think the reason I don't like it is because my grandma's side is very like religious,
Mhm.
they take the phrase that you shouldn't eat anything with blood on it very seriously.
Got
So they
you.
don't eat morcilla. So then I was like, maybe I don't like that.
What about you, Deya?
Okay, listen, we got to talk about. I have a Morcia story. Before we get there, food is very, very important in my family and how I identify as being Puerto
Xavier?
Rican.
I'm
I
sorry,
would
Xavier. I'm tired of you already.
you block him. Anyways, so I would say like being food is like the most important, if not the first thing I remember about just my culture. Even though I was born In Jersey, my family was super traditional in terms of food and like just bringing me up a certain way. So like my grandmother on my mom's side or my dad's side is the one that I was raised around the most. She taught me and my mom how to do everything from scratch, everything that you needed to know, everything that people don't know. Like I always tell people whenever they come, if there's ever some sort of clapback on like how Puerto Rican I am, I'm like, I know how to make pasteles from scratch. I know how to make any of the like sofrito, all of that I know how to make from scratch. And I know people on the island that can't even do that. They're over here buying them. So
Right.
I very much take pride in food and how that looks. And I've always been in some sort of like coastal situation where or just in the diaspora where like there are a lot of Puerto Ricans, thank God. So I came from Jersey, there's Puerto Ricans there. I now live in Florida. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans here, especially coming now. They're starting to come, I feel, more on to Florida first instead of New York.
Mhm.
So we do get a lot of like authenticity there in terms of food. Now let me tell you the morcilla story. I will not do morcillas.
What?
Imagine being like, imagine being like 4 or 5 years old. Okay, mind you, I am in my 30s. You're like 4 or 5 years old. You're in your grandma's kitchen, and everybody's preparing. You don't know what's going on, but they're preparing stuff, and they get this long looking pantyhose. That's what I thought it was, but it wasn't. Okay, and then they're like, stretch it out, stretch it out. So you are holding on to this pantyhose that smells terrible, and your mom is stretching it out all the way to the other side of the kitchen. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, your dad is coming with 2 buckets and he's running because we live in Jersey. So whatever's in there is going to, and I quote, congeal. So then he's like running in and they're all preparing this. And it's just like a stressful situation. Like I'm talking about it now and I'm like, I'm getting anxiety. And then all of a sudden, somebody gets a funnel and then I start seeing the blood and I'm just like, "Ugh, ugh." But then
Yeah.
at that point, I was involved. So they were like, you have to hold it. You have to hold it. And I'm just like, "Ugh." So, and then they all that to make those morcillas, never again, never touch them. Don't need to know anything else. Sometimes you don't need to know how to make everything. I will say that. Like that was my trauma with morcillas, but they are good. They are good. I get it.
The
Have you
process
ever had?
is fun.
Have you
Yeah.
guys ever had sandal, but it's made on a stick, a rotated stick?
Yeah.
Okay, so my family does that sometimes. And because in the area I live, there is a pretty big Puerto Rican population. One time, my sister went to a party with her best friend, and her best friend was half Puerto Rican, so she went with that side of that family. She comes back screaming, and this is with my abuela, my parents, everyone's at my house. I saw a human pig. I saw a human pig. And we're like, a what? Yo, my dad was
What?
laughing on the floor. I don't think he's ever laughed so hard. Like
A human
she was
pig?
trying because she's never seen a pig like on a stick being rotated, so she called it a human pig.
Oh my God.
That's
It's so funny.
hilarious.
That's
But I mean,
funny.
I get the logic.
I get like she was 7, so I get it, but it's still really funny. We still make fun of her for
Oh
that.
my gosh, did any of you guys have to like go and like get the animal like,
Go to the vivero?
fresh? Yeah, and get it
Yeah.
done. When
I,
I was in the Dominican Republic when that happened because my dad was just like always out there and I had to hang out with the pig and his like or her kids and then like the mom was gone and I had no idea. And that was also dramatic, but she was also very
Terrible.
yummy. So I don't know. That was
I've,
crazy.
I've I've gone to the vivero a few times because I've made a whole lechon. Just on the spigot, rotating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I built the fire pit out of bricks and everything. But what I like to do is I like to meet the animal first, and I always thank it
Yeah.
because one thing for me is all energy is borrowed, and like this is quoting the Lion King, like the circle of life is legit. You know, the pig eats whatever, we eat the pig, and then we die, and the pig will eventually eat us, type of thing. You
Yeah.
know, so I
Yeah.
always thank the animal because you're giving life, and that's where the spirituality connects with the food.
Yeah.
It's better
Absolutely.
than my aunt. My aunt used to just she would grab a gallina in Guatemala. It was in the summer. Grab it by the neck, grab a beer can, shove the beer down its throat, wait for it to get drunk, and then ah.
Yeah.
Wow.
My grandma would do
Yeah.
that too. It works because then
Avatar.
they're like too disoriented, so they don't move, and then they're also like
Yeah.
not. And in those practices too, both of the practices that you guys have both mentioned, like this is something that our ancestors have like kind of like passed down to us, even like biologically, or if not like knowing. I mean, you have the idea or the concept of being able to be grateful for your food and
Mhm.
understanding that that energy is transferable. That is very much our ancestors. Also, your aunt's not crazy because guess what? That's not the first time I heard it. So somebody in the past taught us,
Yeah.
right? So like it does show that all of this is aligned, which is the whole point of the
Well,
podcast. We got to talk about food and spirituality. It aligns.
Mm-hmm.
it all connects. It all connects in a magical way, and sometimes it's we don't even realize how it connects us,
Hmm.
And so, just a quick story. In upstate New York, my grandfather and my uncle went hunting, and they shot a deer. And my grandfather tried. Well, my uncle tried to gut the deer first, and he was butchering the deer and it was causing the deer pain. And my grandfather got mad, because it's like you got to respect all life. Even if you're going to use the life for your own needs, you got to respect it. So my grandfather, in the most humane way possible, took the knife from my uncle and just one quick swoop, killed the deer, cut it out of its misery, gutted it out, whatever, and we had the best venison ever that night. Like barbecued deer, everything. He skinned it, gutted it, cleaned it. But it's just it's amazing how everything is connected, especially when it comes down to the music aspect too. You
Hmm.
know, one of the biggest songs is from Hector Lavoe, Aguanile. Like that song holds, in my opinion, holds so much power,
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
power. And
I fucking love that song.
when you hear the
Good one.
tribal the tribal aspects of it, you know.
Yeah.
I would
It's really
agree.
Yeah.
I feel that same way with our music. I love the fact that we've managed to tie all of the parts of us into so many parts of our life when it comes to food and music, right? So like I always say, like, I mean, we know about bomba, we know about plena. We don't talk
Mhm.
about that enough, which is cool that we have artists that are like now kind of having that resurrection. And I'm seeing that, what I would like to say, also resurgence of salsa, which is amazing. But I love the fact that we're able to connect in so many ways through instruments that are from all parts, right? So, like a lot of African influence when we talk about drums, and then even just indigenous instruments that we have. Like, I don't know if maracas are ours fully. I feel like everybody got their own rendition, but like
Version
the
of it,
guiro
yeah.
también, like I have a little guiro somewhere around here.
Hmm.
And I think about that. I know I've talked about it in the server where I want to learn the paranda songs that they do in Christmas, because everyone seems to have fun. So they have them here in Florida, and I don't know any of the words. That's where I get lost.
Yeah.
And I would like to learn, which I feel like we've talked about it, and I think it'll come up. But I think music is a big deal. It is a
Yeah.
big deal, and it's very much making a difference right now.
Hmm.
We have a lot of people, I feel like artists, like advocating for the island in a big way, and they're doing it through music. And how great is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of like Chewy, like the salsa group. I think they're killing it right now. I think they're so underrated. And I grew up, so I don't I know if I've ever mentioned this on the Discord, but my grandfather was a musician. He was a trombonist for El Gran Combo. Same with my uncle. Both of them were pretty big in like the salsa scene back in the 80s and in the 90s. Um, and so like for me at least, music has always played a huge role, but then what makes it more interesting is that because I was also exposed to the church, I saw how the church, especially Caribbean churches, would really bring in traditional instruments into their worship services. So like even though I don't always adhere to like everything I grew up with, I am always thankful that like in some weird ways music was always brought into spirituality in that aspect, whether it's using el guiro or using different traditional instruments or even using the same style of music. um, I got exposed to it, and then being exposed also to the salsa side, I got to like because like if you grew up the way I grew up, you have like secular music and then non-secular music, and then it's
Hmm.
always separated, right? So like it's one of those things where I got to experience the best of both worlds and the beauty of making music only spiritual, but then also making music fun with the underlying of spirituality. And I think that's really cool and something that like we tend to forget that like music can bring out in us. Like for example, Chewy is like a huge like it was so weird because I found their music and I remember saying to myself, man, I would love to have a group of Puerto Rican friends from like who live in the US, but their dream is to go back. And then weirdly enough, this Discord group came up like a few months later. So I think music is just I don't know, music is fun. It like plays a little role in your spirituality all the time.
Hi,
Uh,
Mango.
Hi.
Johnny,
Like
what
it's
about
funny you
you?
mentioned that. Huh? Oh, I was gonna feed off of Mango. About the whole spirituality. I remember when I was younger, we would visit my grandparents in Isabela, and my grandfather. There was a little like a little church around the corner down the road, and I would go there with my grandfather. And a lot of the times they were, like Mango mentioned, they were playing instruments. Just a lot of music. I didn't know what was going on. I was a little kid, but I had my little tambourine, just getting at it. So that will always be a core memory. Even now, like my mother, she's in Pennsylvania, but she's got like her group of like elderly Puerto Ricans, and every Sunday they get together, instruments in her apartment, and they're just singing, like playing the instruments and everything. Sometimes she'll record it. I have to find a clip and show you guys one day, but it's just crazy how it all like ties in.
Yeah, it
Yes.
Yeah.
and it's like in this generation, we get this nostalgia feel from listening to the old timey music, and like it, I feel that helps us reclaim our identity as Puerto Ricans, because we hear like "Deseándote," and we get like flashbacks of mommy and papi cleaning in Sunday morning type of thing, and it's just like you get excited, but then you get like that little nostalgia feel at the same time, like, oh damn, like what am I missing? Like for me personally, anyway, that's how
Yeah,
I feel about it.
Yeah.
You
wake
know,
waking up to the smell of fabuloso,
yeah,
just
yeah,
loud
legit.
music.
Loud music.
It was
Yeah.
reaching fabuloso early in the morning.
But here's the thing, a lot of people don't realize that whole thing is a spiritual moment. Like you
Hmm.
blasting the music, you cleaning your house. That goes back to our ancestors, because cleansing your home was such an important aspect of our culture, like indigenously African, whatever you however you want to view it. Cleaning your home was a way for you to signify that you're removing all the negative energy your house has built up in the week, especially on a Sunday, which was considered the first day of the week, and just like allowing the doors to be open, playing the music. Like that's a very spiritual thing, and we don't talk about that enough. Like the whole tradition of, oh, why do we always blast music on Sundays or Saturdays and clean the whole house? That like stems back from spirituality from like hundreds and thousands of years ago. And like I find it so interesting that it overlaps all the time and we don't even realize that, because when you cleanse your home physically, you're also cleansing it spiritually.
Yeah, yeah. My grandmother used to say when I don't want to butcher it in Spanish, but when you clean on a Sunday and you're going crazy with the music and everything, is lifting up that negative energy to God, so they could take it. Alabanza is what she would used to say. So it could be lifted up and it could be taken away. So that's why you got to be loud about it, because that you want God or the saints, the spirits to hear that you're doing something for them to so they could remove that energy for you. So
Hmm.
I keep that.
I don't know. I need the neighbors to know I got that heat. You know?
Yeah, and to bug
That
the
too.
neighbors, absolutely.
You have to bug the neighbors. I would like to like piggyback off that, and I would say even some of the more spiritual rituals do involve cleaning and cleansing and to begin with, right? So like you have to start anything that way. Our ancestors have made rituals out of even just sweeping like your threshold. I know there
Mhm.
was like una señora that used to live by me, like in the neighborhood. She unfortunately got she has dementia, so she doesn't live there anymore. But the one thing I remember about her every single time, every morning, is she would sweep the front of her house. It did not matter if it was dirty, it didn't matter if it was clean, didn't matter if it rained. She was going to sweep it. And it used to always make me think like that's so weird. And then I think, oh, like this is a necessary thing. Like this is a ritual at the end of the day. And it's something that I've seen so many people do. So to add on to that's true. Like that's just a part of the process. We've just been so used to it. Now it's just become also just a staple tradition. But it is all connected at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think that's the best part about it. It's again, it's all we don't realize it as we're doing it, but it is connected. The food, the music, the spiritual aspect. It all revolves around itself, and in a very
Uh,
beautiful way.
what's interesting too is that, like, sorry if there's an echo. Is there an echo?
No, you got.
It's
Okay.
gone.
Okay. I think what's also interesting is like it doesn't matter what religion or like tradition you're coming from. people always do the same things. It doesn't matter if you're into spiritismo, if you're a Christian, if you're Catholic, whatever you identify as. The routine of still cleaning your house and playing whatever type of music you play, it doesn't matter what type of music you play because it's all frequency. It's very similar. Like I feel like we do the same things in just different fonts is the best way for me to describe it. And
Yeah.
I think it's really funny that there's always this infighting of like, that's evil, that no, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's colonizer, blah blah blah. Like y'all doing the same stuff, just in different fonts.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
true. If it
Absolutely.
wasn't so similar, then we wouldn't have this like blend of different kind of subdivisions of religions that people do, right? So
Mhm.
like we've seen it where we have the Catholicism, but then you do have more like maybe Santeria practices and more like people who are into more natural practices. They're kind of just they do the same things, like, and
Pretty much.
they're talking to the same people sometimes, even just like. So it is interesting to see how I would also say that argue that I think spiritualism is growing in its own way, especially recently. I see a lot of people like our age asking a lot of questions, not just about food and music, but with that as well. And that's what piqued the curiosity for a lot of us in the Discord server. Like we all want to know and we don't. And we're realizing now that there are lots of questions to things, and then some things are not set in stone. So we've had this conversation before with like food, sometimes in the server, and you guys are all have seen it. We'll be like, hey, have you ever eaten stuff like this? And then everybody will be like, ew, or like, yeah, it's really good. Like, I know somebody brought out the ketchup thing. I did not want to be involved, okay, because I was not about to get chewed out. But I will say it here in a safe space because I know everyone's in the comments, and like I'll
You're not
get
safe.
server.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
never,
not safe, girl.
I'm never safe. I'm bold, is what it is. I'll say this: when I was younger, I was a ketchup girl. I will say if the
Fuera.
food is good enough, I
Well,
shouldn't be putting ketchup in it. Now
Well,
as an adult, I have grown up. If the
you
food
messed
is
up.
bad, I'm putting ketchup on it. So that is if it don't taste right, I'm putting ketchup. I'm sorry, but if it's good, it's fine.
The only time I put ketchup on certain foods is one, if the rice is bland as fuck.
Yeah.
Two, if it's white rice and a fried egg. That's when I put a little bit of ketchup.
I never got into the white rice fried egg rhetoric. I don't know. I
Mm.
know. Sue me. I was like,
That's
don't
one of
put
my
that in
favorite
here.
struggle meals.
I know. That's everyone's struggle meal except mine. I'm over here like, I'll put ketchup on it. I just don't want the egg. I don't know.
Listen,
maybe
as
I'm
long as
different.
we're not putting matcha in our chicken, we're good.
I think it's interesting that we're talking about that, the matcha, when this person is in the comments terrorizing all of us.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
agree with you. I don't think that we should be putting matcha in our drumsticks. I don't think we should be putting it in our ground beef or any of our protein. But I'll leave that to everyone else. That's crazy.
Yeah, no.
I
And
agree.
you know what? This brings up a quick debate that I wanna just settle. Ketchup on pateles. Yes or
No.
no?
No, it's
Like I said,
it's
no
how I
now,
feel.
yes in the past. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's something like kiddish about putting ketchup on stuff because I did it when I was a kid. So when I'm as an adult now, I wouldn't. But I also
What?
don't put pique on anything. I don't know if you guys are like hot sauce pique people. I'm not a pique person.
I put
No, you
ketchup on my
can't.
pateles every season. I'm
Well, then
sorry.
you're not getting pasteles.
I'm
Well,
I make my own. Yeah, I'm
Me too.
I
I
definitely
love that.
put ketchup on my pateles. I like mayo ketchup on certain things. I'm not gonna say pateles because
mayo
that's
ketchup with
Okay.
tostones with a little bit of adobo.
yes.
And some
Chef's kiss.
garlic if you put.
Ooh,
Okay,
yes.
yes. I'm glad we brought that up because it was Mimi that had to like, and Sangde, we were talking about this like a couple days ago where I thought Mayukechi was from the island. It is not. Apparently that is an us thing. And I guess I should have known because of the mayo, but like I compartmentalized that into thinking like there's a lot of stuff that came from America to the island. So it would make sense that mayo maybe was like out there, but apparently, I mean, I know people do it in the island, but it didn't come from the island. I
I
don't know
don't
how
know.
true that
You
is,
can
but she
you
looked it
can
up.
buy it in bottles at
Yes.
Walmart and put it.
Yeah,
I remember when I was like 7, I was like, "Papi, aquí venden mayo ketchup," and he's like, "You can just make that."
That's what I'm saying. I was like, who thought of marketing? What can you say? But I thought
right.
the same thing. I was like, why are they making this?
My grandmother used to
So
call
funny.
it secret sauce. She
You were
something.
telling us
Yeah, like I was like,
secret
Mommy,
sauce.
what's this? She goes, "That's my secret sauce. Don't worry, eat." Like
And that's probably how mayo ketchup was made. Let's be real. Some picky
took
kids were
No,
like, I'm not eating this with ketchup. And then they were like, but toma. So
mayo ketchup became the first thing I learned how to cook. I thought I was cooking in the kitchen. I'm like, let's go. I know what
yes,
I'm doing.
I love that.
you know what?
Okay. So now that we're talking about the food, I gotta bring up the biggest. This is gonna be the biggest debate. I have to do it to us.
Oh
The
my god,
raisins. The
Raisins
where?
and
raisins.
what? Where?
That exactly. So let's start with arroz con dulce. Do you feel like you need
Yes,
the raisins, and how many raisins?
Yes, 100%.
Okay,
Functional.
I'm with you. I just don't feel like we need 3 boxes of raisins in one caldo or
if
caldo.
it's the 3 mini boxes, I do 3 of those. The
That's
miniature
My
fine.
box.
grandma does, she does the medium, like the medium ones that they
Wow,
can sell at cost, and she'll do the entire thing, but
that's
it's enough
perfect.
to feed like 30 people.
Right. My grandma thought that like the more raisins the better. It was horrible. I hated it. But her arroz con dulce was good. It's just like too many pasas. And then some people put pasas in their pasteles. I don't. I wouldn't.
Right.
I don't like that. I've seen a couple people do it. I've gone to someone's house and they were like, "Oh," and I saw raisins in there and I was like, "Enough is
Jail.
enough." That's
Right.
what
Jail.
I said. And then they were
Jail.
like, "This is what we do." And I was like, "In what island?" I've never I so that's why I have to ask because I was like, what else are people putting raisins in? Because I need to know. I need to know what else. But yes, I've seen them in pasteles before.
I don't think olives belong in pasteles. I'm gonna be fully. I don't like olives,
I
so
support
maybe
you.
this is okay. Thank you.
I
I
hate that olive.
I love the olives, but I get it. I get
It
it.
ruins the whole thing. You
Thank
get
you.
like the
It's
aftertaste
like
in
you're
it
eating it
too.
so good, and that, you get that bite and it's bitter, and
Like,
you're like,
yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh.
olives are the most disgusting thing ever. And my wife is right next to me upset because she's an olive person.
Well, thank
About to
God.
smack the shit
I
out
was
of
like,
you.
I'm fighting in this.
Right.
I'm fighting in this alone. I don't think that we should be putting a bunch in them, but I do like every now and again if an olive shows up somewhere, I'm like, it could be
See,
worse.
olives are amazing. No, they're not, baby. I'm
have you
sorry.
guys ever made arroz con gandules, but instead of using oil on the bottom, you use like bacon to get the fat from it, and then you add the sofrito to it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
love
that.
cooking my rice. That's my favorite way to cook my rice.
Yeah, I've seen that.
that is
I've seen
also
that.
good, I would
You know,
say.
you know what I like about the whole cooking aspect and like how it specifically translate into the spirituality aspect. It's the mixing of ingredients. You know,
Yes.
like think of when we make a asopao. You know, we use herbs, spices. You know, a whole shit ton of vegetables, and then the sacrifice would be the chicken thrown into the pot. We stir that shit up for 45 minutes, and while listening to music, which could be the spell to it. You know, if you want to be technical about it, but yeah, I love how it's again another connection.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would agree.
I like
I
that.
just want to add on that cheddar cheese on pasteles was recommended, and I don't stand for that.
Who said
Um,
that?
Who
I don't
else?
know. It's
Who
probably
else?
someone that puts matcha on chicken. Probably. I don't. Just a guess. I don't
Oh,
know.
Oh,
okay. You know
okay.
what? Yeah, I'm not
That-
touching this.
Like
If you
that's
guys
a
want to talk about this crazy
That's like
atrocity, please do. But
that's
I'm
like when
ignoring.
my
that's a
husband told
desecration.
me I want to try American cheese on pie, and I said that's a you thing. That is, do not associate me with that ever.
Not the palm colored
That's some.
man asking
That's
for cheese
some.
on a pie.
That's some
yeah,
WPS. You know.
yeah.
Wow.
No offense,
No, because I wouldn't know what to say. I would literally sit there like,
That's
I
so
don't think I
funny.
heard. Did you guys try it though? Like, how did this go?
No, he's been begging me we should try it for Thanksgiving. I'm like, no, I'm good.
We're not
No.
pilgrims. It's all right.
Right. Let him try for Thanksgiving. That's not your holiday. That's okay. He could do it, and then we could just watch. I genuinely would like to know how it is, not through
I'll let you
my.
know.
Yeah. Let me know,
I'll
girl,
let
because
you know
now
how
I'm
it goes.
curious.
I'll let you know. I'm worried.
I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole. Enjoy
Mhm.
that.
I'm not.
Well, since we've been in the topic of this already, and we've talked about likes and dislikes, so what is your least favorite food? Do you feel?
In general.
Yeah, like Puerto Rican wise, like your least
Oh,
favorite
Puerto
food.
Rico. I don't remember seeing it.
Let's see. Yeah.
Watch your mouth.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna probably
Okay,
make.
this is the hard part because I grew up in an area where I was with so many Dominican people. Sometimes I confuse, is this Puerto Rican or is it? But in general, I don't like bacalao. My mom's
Yeah.
my
Oh
mom's
no, we
best
have
friend
so
used to make
many.
it all the
Yeah,
time. She's like, "You want bacalao?" I'm like, First of all, anything that sounds like that sounds like it belongs in the trash." No.
yeah, we had a lot of bacalao haters because I've talked about this before, and I don't know. I love me some fish. I love bacalao. It's salty. I get it. But if you put it with a little bit of tomato sauce and the vegetable, I could work with it. I'll tell you one that I don't like though, and it is like some sort of guisado. So that's also I feel like where people get thrown off. I don't like patitas. I do not like patitas.
Okay.
I
Okay.
God.
a mí no me gusta la patita, and I am always fighting for my life and my family because my mom and one of my brothers love patitas. My grandmas love patitas. I can't get past the smell of pig's feet. I'm so sorry, and you have to pressure
It's
cook them.
God.
And then they're like, well, you can eat the beans, and I'm like, they taste like patitas. I don't want the patitas. So I would say like,
Patitas.
yeah, it's just man, I don't like pig's feet. I don't know. And then my
You
grandma
got-
used to like chop up her own chickens, even here in Orlando. Like you could not get her out the campo, and she would also eat chicken's feet. And I'm like, there's no meat there. I don't understand, but I'm happy for you.
you
I wish
suck
I
on
could
it
eat
and you
chicken
get
feet.
the flavor. It's
Flavor that gay. Those are feet. He was walking around the whole
no.
time.
oh my
Yeah,
The
god.
feet
worst
finder over
is
there.
panza de cerdo. Mm-mm.
Yup,
I'm a
I would
Like,
fan.
also agree because anything chewy. What are we doing?
thank you. And they make it in soup, and I'm like,
And then you
Yeah.
gotta
this,
chew.
you know that's a struggle meal though. That you know that wasn't in like I knew the moment I'm like, because my family's from El Campo. Like I'm
Yeah.
from Juncos. If you know where Juncos is,
Uncles go
okay.
hard.
That's up in El Monte.
like you be driving at 2 in the morning, you just see people on their horses on the road, and you're like, nice sir. But no, oh my god, I hate panza de sopa. Gross. Don't ever
Yeah,
eat it.
no, and it's true. You were right. You make a really good point, and that's what I always like tell people. This is not even just for our culture, but anybody that has had,
Mhm.
any sort of just like people of color that have come to this country in the past. When you have people who were enslaved, they were not able to get the good parts of the meat. So yes, we
Right.
were given things like pig's feet, just intestines, things that we didn't want, but like
Yeah.
we had to make something out of it. And that way, I'm like, yes, I'm so glad that we are able to honor, the fact that we just were always oppressed, but trying to be better and do better. But like, girl, I cannot. I like, we are better than that. And also, like, I don't know, but yes, no on the patitas.
But
Anything chewy, orejas, I don't like those
Oh my god.
unless
mm-mm.
you
There's a
fry
way
them.
to there's a way to crispify them in such a
How?
beautiful way, and it tastes like a cuerito.
Ugh.
Talk to me after this, because if
You
you
give
can
it a
get me the
salt
tip, almost
bath.
I can eat them.
Legit, you cover the whole thing in salt, and
Okay.
that salt will suck out all that moisture, and then you give it a nice score to it, and throw it in the oven for about 2 hours, low and slow, 2 hours, and it'll crisp up in such a magical way, and it's like chicharrón. It's beautiful.
I'll do
It is
that
beautiful.
as long
You
as
know
you
what
don't put it
is
in
cool
the
though?
too.
You know what is cool though? How we have been trying to keep our indigenous roots with some of the words that we keep with our food. So like we use the word guineo for banana. And if
Mhm.
you know that that's not how you say banana in other Spanish countries, like growing up, my mom would say banano, but then my grandma would say guineo, and I'm like, are you guys talking about the same thing, or am I just stupid? I didn't know, but like, I didn't know that guineo was like a Taino word until like a couple
Mhm.
of years ago. I'm like, oh, that's cool. We're still keeping these words.
Yeah, what's in
Yes,
it? Was
I
it
think
barbecue or
genius too.
barbacao as well?
Yeah,
Barbacao. I
barbacoa.
think
Yeah,
Yes.
quenepas. Quenepas too. I think that one.
Quenepa is a excuse me. Quenepa is an indigenous word.
Yes. And
Yeah.
ching, like un ching, that is
Mhm.
also
Ching, yeah.
Mhm.
thing.
There's
That
a
goes
there's
into
Mm.
a whole nother.
yeah. That's a whole nother episode
Yeah.
of
I know, I think that's cool that we still keep it in our own like food culture. Like I think that's so beautiful that like we've never let that go. Or like we're gonna call it what it really is.
yeah yeah.
Yes.
I think it's so cool.
I would
I-
also like to say that one thing that, and I talked about it before, we don't write anything down. So how cool is it that we've been passing these things over like beyond and then some? Because even now, like I've been playing with the idea of like doing a cookbook for my mom because she taught me all these things. But then at the same time, I have to sit there. You know how hard it is to try to figure out how much you're putting when you're just like doing like tres vueltas de adobo or
Right.
something crazy like that. And I'm like, how do I put that? Because what if your caldero's not as big as mine? It's just chaos. But like, it's cool because that means that this has all been like an ancestral thing. We've been
Yeah.
passing it down so much, and like word of mouth really is
Yeah.
big and important. So like, how cool is that?
We're keeping memories alive through secret recipes.
Yes,
You know. So, and I think that's a beautiful thing too. It's just it keeps us connected. It keeps us, with a hold of our identity as Puerto Ricans. Even being born and raised out here in the diaspora, we I think all of us have some type of memory of mommy or papi cooking something in the kitchen in some type of way, and us just watching over their shoulders of how they did it. And like you said, we never used actual measurements. For me, when it came down to making arroz con andule, the can that the gandula came in, that was the can
Mhm.
that we used for water.
Yep.
That was a cup. That was
yeah,
2 cups. Yeah,
Yeah.
we used we
yeah,
used the ancestors telling us, "Mira, that's enough." Yeah,
right,
you,
Yeah.
you know, So if a real Puerto Rican diasporican cookbook was made, like un poco de adobo, un poco de achote, un chin de sal, that'll be the measurement guideline. you know.
I agree. And it's in our
And
like the food is also in our music. Like, how crazy is it? Like, it's always that whole thing of just like
Mhm.
everything ties together. Because how many songs you can probably think of a couple songs right now that have food, and you're like, okay, like arroz con habichuela, pues el
A
gran
comer
combo.
pasteles, a comer lechón.
Esa
so
también, yeah. We
everyone
always talking about food. Everybody's just always hungry. And then it's crazy because if you're playing that music and you cooking, everybody's hungry. They waiting.
Oh
So
yeah. It,
it
it
works
sets the
out.
mood. It sets the
Mhm.
mood, and it reminds me of something that I was reading about. Big time with when the the tribal music of bomba y plena was playing. And the percussions were so close to the ground that the vibrations of everybody playing would be the signal that it was time for everybody to come together. So it was like the
Wow.
music coming together, and I cried when I was reading that, because that's why I want to get a set of congas for myself now, because that made me cry, genuinely made me cry, just hearing the vibrations of that. Was like the dinner bell, like, okay, it's time for everyone to come together. It's time for everyone to eat together, dance together, laugh together as a family, as a community. And I like that the music ties in with the food. I like that the music ties in with the people. It's just a beautiful thing.
And speaking of that, I think that's why like I love going back to ancestral spirituality is because that was what our ancestors used to survive. Like whether we have African enslaved ancestry, right? That was 400 years. And for your family to have survived that for 400 years is a testament to how important spirituality and just surviving through the means of spirituality was important to them. Same with
Mhm.
your Taino ancestry or even like your Spaniard ancestry. And they moved there because they were impoverished. So much of it was tied into just like having a little bit of faith in whatever they could bring back from their home countries and like mixing it together. And so that's why, like, when I always get really saddened when people don't want to understand like the more ATRs, espiritismo religions, because I'm like, as much as you want to deny that, as much as you want to say it's evil or say that it has like bad connotations, for so long your family used that to survive, and
Yeah.
then you decided to change religions because it's just easier, it's more socially accepted, it's more palatable to the average person on the island or in the diaspora. But what you're forgetting is that those other things that you are now rejecting is what pushed your family to survive for as long as they did. Because your lineage could have stopped at any point and
Yeah.
it didn't. You kept going. So I think it's really important that like when we think about spirituality too in tandem with all of that is like even the foods that we eat, even the music that we play, it was all part of our survival to make it to where we are right now and to create the culture that we have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said. And like to kind of throw in some insight on that, I would also like to say that I feel like a lot of us in the diaspora are having a hard time with identity when it comes to spiritualism and how it looks like, because and I have talked about this with like some of you guys, in the sense that you grow up in a Western culture where, like, you know, you do the whole like paganism, and it's like Halloween and, you know, pilgrims, witches, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what we're kind of raised to see. And then we kind of like branch out, we get older, and we try to hold on to the culture and the roots that we do have, and we try to find a lot of information, and it's hard because you don't know. Do you guys hear an echo?
No, I don't hear.
Okay, good. Okay. So basically, all that's to say that a lot of us are confused on how to like move forward, because a lot of these things do feel like a private practice, but I think that we're missing the point where we actually know a lot more than what we realize.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I was talking to my mom about this before the podcast, and she was telling me how, you know, growing up, I was told that the witches of like the island or whatever were women that were actually helping their like people who were disabled and people who had a lot of issues, but they were seen like brujas because they were doing a lot of holistic things. And one thing she told me was that they like to chant. Like, there were women that would chant at night, and it was to soothe a lot of people with issues like things that we didn't talk about, maybe mental health issues, or just like you have your family that's older and, you know, it helped them. But a lot of people demonize them. And I wouldn't have known that. I never fact checked that, but I could tell you that my mom told me, and she got it from another woman, and so on and so forth. So, like, there's a lot of stuff that we know, and we're not being intuitive enough, I feel, because we're just kind of being pulled in that direction. And it kind of can shift our identity a little when we're like, I don't feel aligned with this, but I only know this. And
Right.
so I think like this server has been amazing in that, where a lot of us are talking to each other and feeling a lot more open about talking about spirituality, where I feel like there was a lot of like being quiet about it. I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's important that, in a respectful way, it's beautiful that we can come together and actually talk about it, because I don't want to see that part of our culture go down. I think that it's a lot more than just rituals, y brujas, and all that. It's actually getting in touch with nature, getting in touch with our roots through food, through music. That's all a ritual. We just talked about it. It
Yeah.
all kind of adds up. So I think that's been one of the most beautiful things. And shout out to the spiritual channel on Discord. I don't see a lot of you guys there, but I would like to see more of you. Mango and I have been talking about throwing more things in there, but of course, of course, if you're comfortable, because I know that this is an interesting topic, but just it's been an interesting journey for me in general.
And I would love to challenge people, if like you grew up in a different religion or you're very opposed to it, just have a conversation with someone about it. Don't go about it immediately thinking this person is evil, they're possessed, or anything like that. Because I think when you go in very narrow-minded, you won't be able to hear someone out. Like, I think there is a beauty of listening to people. Like, how were they raised? I love listening to people who were raised in an ATR, because how they grew up is so different than how I was raised. And so when you learn from them, you're like, oh wow, this is like very sacred, this is a very important religion, but they're way more private about it than you would meet a Catholic person or a Protestant person. And it's so interesting because the way they've had to keep so much of their spirituality secret for survival is so fascinating to me. But at the same time, like understanding that it has to be kept private, because like it's not meant for everyone. It's just really interesting. So I always encourage someone, if you're like on the fence or if you're like weirded about it, just have a conversation with someone. You would be surprised how much you learn and how much you can change your mind just by having a simple conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing that that I've seen on the server is that we have different spiritual channels. Like, we have our spiritual channel. We have, a spot for the Christian section. We have a section for Muslims, and we have a Jewish section. And sometimes they'll pop in and they'll talk. And I've even asked them about like their practices and what's the difference from Puerto Rican culture and converting into. And this is going to be a whole nother episode when we get in depth into the religions and how people from the diaspora venture out into other walks of faith. But I was born and raised into the Catholic Church, and I was always taught that the santeria aspect of it, the spiritual aspect of it, is no. That's it. No, you don't do that. You don't touch that. You leave that alone. And later on, I come to find out, because I like to do my research. I was always drawn to that side of, the spiritual side. I come to find out that my grandmother used to do stuff, and I was very sick as a kid. I had cancer as a kid. So my grandmother made a promesa with a santo, and for me to get better, and whatnot. And I'm like, but my grandmother was the one who would tell me, no, you don't touch that stuff. But mira, you out here doing the same thing that you're telling me not to do. What's the problem?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us have been through that, except my family, which we could talk about if you guys want to. It's a crazy story. But I will say, I do think it's wonderful that this server has a purpose for all types of spirituality. We may be talking about a couple of things that are more things that we see commonly in Puerto Rico. That does not mean that it's just like pigeonholing a couple
Mhm.
things. We do talk about a lot of things, just like Wes said. I love the fact that we have the Jewish space and the Muslim space. I have learned a lot in that regard. But I agree. Like I think I was raised Catholic, and then there were brujos here and there.
Mhm.
I also had I tell people the story all the time. I had an uncle, or like my dad's uncle, he got arrested for trying to go into a graveyard and do not so great things with the bones. And I'm bringing this story up because there's a lesson to it. So before you're like, oh, they're crazy, yeah, maybe my family is crazy. But he went and he did the whole thing, and he was like out here, and he went with his son, and they caught him trying to do all this crazy stuff. He got arrested, and it was this whole fracaso. Everybody in the family was like, no, blah, blah, blah. All that's to say that when you are in a spiritual space, there are people who can kind of be not so great, and they can swindle and they can scam. That's something we can talk about in the future. But I will say, just like lead with your intuition and your heart, and your ancestors will guide you. If something does not feel aligned, it's because it's not. There are a lot of people out there, and that's in any practice, that could not be so great and are trying to get bones that are not for them, which is
Right.
crazy. But all that's to say that this is an open space. If you are in the server, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We're here with an open
Yeah.
heart. I would love to know what's going on. But yes, practice can look different for everyone in this regard.
And I also want to say, like, for those who are watching, I'm fifth generation. I was raised fifth generation Pentecostal. So for those who like think like, oh, I would never touch that, or that is so like untouchable, I would never look at it. Come talk to me. I will have a heart to heart conversation with you. I was where you were at. I know where your resistance is coming from, and I think just being open to having conversations, because like I feel like the island is very, or just people from Puerto Rico are very split with religion. You're
Mhm.
either Catholic with some spirituality sprinkled in there, or you're very evangelical, and there is no in between. Very rarely will you find a Jewish Puerto Rican, a Muslim Puerto Rican, or anything in the middle. Like you have very two extremes of the ends.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think this is a good spot to close off. But before we go, I want to ask everybody their favorite song and their favorite dish growing up. So we're gonna start with you, Deya.
That's hard. Song is tough. The song is tough, but I will say, for the sake of this conversation, anything anything that was kind of just like Jerry Rivera. I love Jerry Rivera. I think he's so fine. But like throw him somewhere in there and I'm into it. But favorite food, even now, like a comfort food that I even make myself, that I'm like, oh, this is my favorite thing. Or two things would be tembleque and relleno de
Mhm.
papa. I will make a relleno de papa, and I will make it myself because I do not trust anyone, and they don't make them big enough. So
Noted. What about you, Johnny?
Man, that's a hard one. I would say with the food, probably pastelillos and relleno de papa.
Okay.
Music, I don't know. There's so many. Maybe like, let me give you what makes you feel the most Puerto Rican. I guess
There
if
you
I hear
go.
it instantly, "Píntame" by Elvis Crespo. Instant.
Yeah,
Píntame.
It'll get you moving. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like
that man is Puerto Rican.
that
Yeah.
one just gets you going.
What about you, Mango?
Okay, so music, I like La India, but her one of her first few albums, it was very spiritual. So I think it's like I don't know, I think it's a beautiful album. I'll send it to you guys. It's really pretty. And then food, I love caldo de pollo. I could eat that every day, but I also think that's just like my Guatemalan side, we eat a lot of soup.
Yeah.
So like when my grandma taught me how to make the Puerto Rican caldo, I'm like, God bless. This is just as good as any other soup. So yeah, caldo de pollo. Yeah.
I
For
love
me,
that.
Mm-hmm.
the song that always triggers home, honestly, is always Aguanile. What that
Mhm.
that's that always drags me. Hector Lavoe, you know, and I like to brag because I'm from the Bronx. You know, Bronx is home of hip hop and salsa. I own that shit. You know, Xavier, don't say nothing.
Don't even
And
listen. Don't even look at those comments. Don't even look at those comments. I'm not even. Everyone else, I'm looking at your stuff. Sabe
yeah,
can he can.
food wise is it. I'm a sucker for a good pernil. You know, when that cuerito is nice and crispy, and you get that nice piece of dark meat, juicy as fuck. That I'm a sucker for. I can't deny that.
I
You know.
love that so much. I will
So
say, side note, I don't know if you guys knew this. Mark Anthony in La India used to be in freestyle. So if you know
Mhm.
freestyle, which we'll talk
Mhm.
about in another podcast, but like, because freestyle is very Puerto Rican driven, Boogaloo is very Puerto Rican driven. But like, when I found that out, I was like, what? So I had to
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. La India
And
has a whole song for Yamaya. If you ever want to listen to
you.
it,
Yes,
he does.
very good song. Very good
so
song.
good. Yes, 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 yes.
But y'all, thank you guys for watching at home, guys. Thank you guys for joining in. Mango, thank you for being our spiritual
Thank you
guru.
for having me. I love you guys so much. This is my favorite like group ever.
Thank you guys. Tune in next week. Don't know what we're gonna talk about yet, but we'll
We'll
figure it
figure
out
it
as
out.
we go.
might be kind of hot though.
Yeah,
We'll
it's gonna
yap
be it's
about
gonna be a little
something.
hot.
Yeah.
you know, as always, like, comment, subscribe, share. Tell your friends, tell your grandmothers, tell your grandfathers.
Abuelita.
Yeah, tell your uncle third time removed. Tell everybody.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Thank you guys.